After being transported to another world 5 years ago, he has the opportunity to travel to the same world again in order to fix all the mistakes. We see Uki sitting with Uki, his childhood friend, but Uki didn't care that they were now adults, so she kept flirting with Uki and putting her hand in his hair as if she was flirting with him.
Yeah, boy.
Uki told her to stop it because such things cause rumors everywhere. Uti replied, I didn't care about that, we're childhood friends and everyone can say whatever they want. Suddenly, without warning, the floor of the classroom lit up with a strange light. Uchi and several of his classmates were surprised to find themselves in the middle of a barren desert, with all the features of the school they had just been in disappearing. To their surprise, they saw strange demonic creatures armed with huge weapons such as clubs. When one of them approached Uki to hit her, Uki touched him with his fingertip and knocked him away. Uki was amazed and wanted to talk to him, saying, "Do you have superpowers?" But Uki said, "I don't think this is the right time for such things." Suddenly, several royal knights arrived on the scene and began to fight the demonic creatures. We then moved to the royal palace, and there we saw the king, who we learned was the ruler of Destinia, talking to a group of fighters, who had answered the call and came to the palace as soon as they were summoned, and so the king thanked them. We learned from the king's words that the fighters in front of him were a group of fighters who had been summoned from another world, so it was natural to see Uhi and Uki in their ranks. After Uhi learned that they had to fight for the kingdom of Destinia, she was astonished and said, "What stupidity, I can't even fight." But Uki spoke to her and said, "It's too late, we have to do our duty." So we then saw Uki and Uki being instructed by their supervisor Ilka, who kept talking to them saying, "Since you've been called here, you must all have quite a bit of superpowers. It's just that you have to concentrate in order for your superpowers to manifest." Although Uhi felt that she couldn't fight because she didn't have any talent, but after listening to Ilka's instructions, she immediately recognized her superpower. While the fighters were busy practicing, Uki was walking around and not paying attention to the training. Ilka scolded him when she saw him and said, "You idiot, get back to training right away or I'll have to bring you back by force."
Sure, buddy.
But Uki said, "I'd like to see you try to do that." Ilka launched herself at him, but Uki was able to dodge the blow and even hit her with a powerful blow that knocked her away. Only then did Ilka realize that she was in front of a professional fighter and remembered that the person in front of her was Sitso, one of the most prominent fighters in this world. We realized that this was not the first time Uki had been summoned there. Ilka remembered that she was just his servant.
What do you mean by that?
After a short time, another fighter, Glyn, appeared and started talking to Ilka, asking her what she was doing, and Ilka told him that it was Sitso. Glyn was very surprised, especially since Sitso's physique was very different. Then they decided to go to their classmate Tia and tell her that Sitso was back, and she was overjoyed. They chatted and reminisced about what had happened in the past. We learned that Sitso was one of the most prominent fighters in this world, but suddenly, in a battle, he disappeared and never reappeared until today. When they asked him what happened, he told them that he didn't remember much, but he was sure that he disappeared from their world and was born in another world until he was summoned back to this world. Suddenly, Sitso asked them about a demon fighter named Tuma. Tuma is one of the most prominent fighters in the demon army, but Sitso's colleagues tell him that they don't know anything about him for a long time. Sitso then met with the commander of the army and talked with him about possible battles against the demons in the coming period. After they talked for a while, Sitso decided to leave the castle and spoke to everyone saying, "I must leave this place alone to stop this war. You don't know how cruel Tuma is. I'm sure that if a battle breaks out with the demon army under his command, the results will be very unpleasant." Army commander was very hesitant and kept telling Sitso, "You're one of the best fighters in our army and we shouldn't sacrifice you." But Sitso was adamant. Then Sitso's comrade spoke to him and said, "We won't let you move a single step without us. We have to go with you." But Sitso was adamant and told them, "Put aside your emotions. What I'm doing is in everyone's best interest. I have to provide adequate protection for our army, and at the same time, I don't want to put you in danger." We noticed that the most affected was Ilka, who spoke to Sitso saying, "Please let me go with you." But Sitso was determined to go alone, and Ilka gave him a powerful combination of fire and wind magic to help him on his journey. Sitso said goodbye and left. We then moved on to a girl named Rory and learned that she loves her grandfather very much, as her grandfather was a maker of rare jewelry. One day, a young man came to the shop to buy some expensive jewelry, but the grandfather refused to sell it to him. Although the young man urged him a lot, the grandfather remained adamant. But the young man pulled out some rare gold coins from his pocket, and only then did the grandfather agree to sell. After the young man left, Rory spoke to her grandfather saying, "Didn't you tell me over and over again that jewelry is more important than coins, even if they are gold?" Grandpa laughed and said, "I've said that many times, but it's different when I see the coins myself." After a while, Grandpa passed away, and we noticed that Rory tried her best to preserve the rare and precious artifacts that Grandpa had in his shop. But when Rory tried to move the jewel to a safe place, she was attacked by a very large wolf. Although she kept telling the wolf to stay away from me, "I have a skinny body and I don't taste good," the wolf eventually attacked her. Moments before the wolf ate her, Sitso arrived on the scene and managed to kill the wolf. Rory thanked him and kept saying, "How much do I owe you? Believe me, I don't have the money to pay you back, but maybe I can buy you a nice lunch." But Sitso said, "I don't want anything from you," and left. Rory said, "How would you like to be my bodyguard? I promise that after I deliver my grandfather's things to the right place, I'll get paid a lot of money. Then I'll be able to pay you the amount you asked for." Although Sitso was determined not to accept the offer, he kept telling himself, "I have to do something good for everyone." So he talked to Rory and said, "Okay, I'll be your bodyguard, but you have to be quiet. I don't like a talkative person." They finally arrive at the harbor where Rory is supposed to board a ship to pick up her grandfather's belongings, but no one wanted to give her their own boat even though she was willing to pay good money. After a while, the harbor guard spoke to her inappropriately. After checking her papers and making sure they were in order, they asked her to give them the small bag she was carrying to make sure there was nothing wrong with it. Sitso confronted them and spoke to them, saying that your role in this port is to check the safety of the traveler's papers. Who are you to take away her handbag? Naturally, the guards didn't like those words, so they talked to Sitso and said, "Who are you, you idiot, to talk to us like that? Sitso tells you that he's Rory's bodyguard. Rory couldn't find a ship to take her to, so I spoke to Sitso and said, if things continue like this, I'll buy a ship." Sitso was very surprised and said, "It's going to cost you a lot of money." Then he said, "I have an idea that won't cost you too much. I was on my way to the demon continent. I can drop you off wherever you want." Rory agreed, and the two of them set off in the morning. After looking for a place to spend the night, they decided to hide out with a man who lived near the harbor. At the man's house, Rory began to tell her grandfather's story. "My grandfather was one of the best jewelers in the world," she told Sitso. "A few days before he died, someone entrusted him to design a pin with a rare gem. And although my grandfather was able to complete the work, he sensed that his time was coming to an end. So he spoke to me and said, 'Rory, you must deliver this jewel to its owner.' So I keep my handbag with this jewel in it. I have pledged to my grandfather to protect it, and I will do so at all costs." Sitso was amazed after hearing Rory's story. "It's okay, I'll protect you, and I promise I'll help. You get the jewel to its rightful owner." When Rory went to take a bath, Sitso couldn't resist his curiosity. So he opened the box the jewel was in, as if to confirm something he had suspected because he remembered that the jewel had a long story. After a long and eventful day, they fell into a deep sleep. Sitso discovered that the harbor guards knew where he and Rory were hiding, so the guards went there and broke in. They soon began to threaten Sitso and demanded that he and Rory surrender quietly. Sitso managed to escape through the window of the room he was in with Rory, who was amazed, especially since the jump was from a very high distance. But the real astonishment came after the chase continued until they reached the beach. There, Sitso was able to summon a very large sea creature. As soon as he asked it to transport them to the demonic continent, the creature immediately began to do so. Rory thought to herself, "Looks like I've chosen the right guardian." But she soon began to feel afraid because what Sitso was doing was not normal. The harbor guards stood around not knowing how to report what they saw to their colleagues. Therefore, they agreed not to tell anyone about what happened because no one would believe such things. And indeed, the sea animal took them to the place they wanted to go. The fun didn't stop there, as Rory and Sitso watched the sea battles that took place between this creature and a number of other sea creatures. After the end of one of the battles, Rory was surprised that the sea creature that transported them turned into a beautiful girl named Lafaya, and we learned that she has control over all the sea creatures. Lafaya then began to admonish Sitso, "I haven't seen you in years, and now you show up out of the blue and ask me to transfer you to the demon continent." Afterward, they all sat around eating and chatting. Lafaya started talking to Rory about the reason for her trip. After finding out about the precious jewel that Rory will be transporting, she said, "It is certain that you will deliver this jewel to a lady named Dizastal in a castle near here." Rory wondered, "How can you know such secret information?" Lafaya smiled and turned the conversation to Sitso, saying, "It seems your friend doesn't know who Dizastal is. We learned that Dizastal is a demon lord, so this gem was very valuable to everyone." After a while, Sitso talked to Lafaya about the past. Lafaya lost her composure and said, "Don't remind me of the past. We had a wonderful love story until you suddenly disappeared and only appeared now." In order to please her and her people, Sitso decided to catch a lot of sea creatures to cook them in the most delicious way, which made everyone on the island rush to the island to eat these wonderful foods. While everyone was busy eating, Rory spoke to Lafaya, asking her how she came to know Sitso. Lafaya told her that when they first met, there was a huge battle between the two of them, but Sitso managed to win. When Rory asked her about the reason for the fight, Lafaya replied that 5 years ago, Sitso tried to cross her sea without her permission. But Lafaya, after realizing Sitso's good intentions towards everyone, made a deal with him and told him that she wouldn't let anyone cross the sea see again. At that time, Rory spoke to her saying, "Now I understand, you are the reason why the rate of maritime crime has decreased since then." Lafaya assured her of that fact. Suddenly, a demon named Flad appears on the island, who we learn is very close to the Demon Queen. And even though demons and sea creatures don't get along very well, Flad swallowed his pride and addressed Sitso and Lafaya, telling them something that was very surprising to them. Flad said, "You must move quickly to save the Demon Queen. She has been proposed to by a man named Tyrion." Lafaya was stunned and said, "That's supposed to be good news." On the contrary, Flad told them, the suitor will subjugate her with a necklace that carries a curse greater than any magical curse in the world. When Sitso asked him about the circumstances, Flad said, "About a month ago, we were attacked by the human world. When Dizastal offered peace, we were negotiated by Tyrion, who offered a condition to stop the war. The condition was to marry Dizastal." As soon as Rory heard Tyrion's name, she told them that this man is not a strong fighter, but his most powerful weapon is money. He is one of the richest merchants in the human world, despite the friction between the demons and the sea creatures. Lafaya decides not to abandon Dizastal. Sitso is determined to help her. After learning from Flad all the information about the wedding to be held in the demon castle, they set out to save Dizastal. Of course, their path was not a bed of roses. It was filled with hardships and battles against various creatures. But along the way, we notice that Lafaya loves Sitso very much. So she joined forces with him and they were able to get through all the hardships. Lafaya kept remembering how she didn't love life until she met Sitso, so they bravely continued on their way in order to arrive in time to save Dizastal. On the way, Sitso told her that this time the war is different. If we assume that the war last time was just a coincidence, then this time someone has orchestrated everything and I'll know who it is soon. After a long march, Sitso reached the castle of the demon ruler and there he decided to make peace with her. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to bring peace to everyone." And we saw how those words really touched Dizastal. So she remembered when Sitso gave her a precious gem in the past and told her that this was a token of reconciliation between them. After Dizastal agreed to the reconciliation, things between all the kingdoms were much better than before, and trade began to take place between the two kingdoms that were feuding a short time ago. However, a few days after Dizastal gave her promise to Sitso, she was surprised by the attack of an army from the kingdom of Distinia. And after the commander of her armies informed her of what happened, she spoke to him saying, "Do not jump to conclusions, and let us see what is happening with a fair eye so that we know our next step." Then she said to herself, "I will keep my promise to you, Sitso, no matter what." She was almost certain that something strange was going on. Despite her promise to Sitso, she ordered her armies to line up and put weapons and ammunition in place in preparation for any possible battles. A few days later, Tyrion arrived at her palace and proposed marriage again, and Dizastal felt very confused. It was the first time she felt that she might not be able to fulfill her promise to Sitso. We also noticed how those close to Dizastal, especially the commanders of her armies, are very unhappy with her decision to postpone the battles against Destinia's armies, especially since it was Destiny's army that started the attack, and when they realized that she didn't want to do so in order to fulfill her promises, it made them even more angry and upset. After Tyrion spoke to Dizastal, she told him that she wanted more time to think and make up her mind. Tyrion told her that he didn't mind, then offered her a magical necklace, but her assistants didn't like it because it contained a curse. After he left her palace, we saw him in his carriage talking to a masked man and thanking him for his help in convincing Dizastal to marry him. We noticed how happy the masked man was with the way things had turned out, so he smiled and said, "This is my lord's wish, and it must be done." After Dizastal thought about Tyrion's proposal, she felt that she had no choice but to marry him. Not marrying him would only mean a war between the kingdoms, which she didn't want, especially after her promise to Setso. On the wedding day, Dizastal appeared in a beautiful white dress, in which she looked radiant. Tyrion was also very happy. Before the wedding ceremony began, Tyrion kept talking to everyone present, telling them that it was time for humans and demons to unite, and together we could rule this world. Although his words were greeted with cheers from his fans, they didn't sit well with Dizastal's followers, of course. They were offended, but they didn't want to do anything to upset Dizastal, especially since she was their queen. The ceremony had already begun, and Dizastal approached Tyrion to put on the necklace that would mean she was his queen forever. A moment before this happens, Sitso breaks through the glass on the roof of the church and begins a fierce battle against Tyrion's followers. Despite being outnumbered, Sitso manages to defeat most of them. Before they could turn the tide, Lafaya arrived and began fighting Tyrion's minions. After the masked man noticed Sitso's strength, he fought him fiercely, but Sitso was able to defeat him as well. "It's okay, I've discovered that your power is much greater than I imagined, so I'll hurry to inform my master and I promise we'll meet again soon." Although Sitso cursed him, he managed to escape. Sitso then began to examine everything, and when he saw the curses accompanying the bodies, he said, "I'm sure Tuma is behind this whole mess." As for Dizastal, Sitso spoke to her and told her that we must always be careful. We should expect more tricks from Tuma. A little later, Rory arrived at the church where the wedding was supposed to take place. After making sure everything was okay, she gave Sitso the rare jewel she had with her, and said, "You lost the jewel in the past, so you have to give it back to her. And let this be the beginning of an everlasting covenant between the two of you, so that the wars between the kingdoms will never be reignited again." We traveled back in time a few years when Sitso was still a small child, and we saw how Uhi was very friendly with him. However, Sitso wasn't the same. Sometimes Uhi would ask him to play with her, but most of the time Sitso didn't want to honor her request. After they grew up and started high school, Uhi wanted to go to the same school as Sitso, but he spoke to her with a cold heart and said, "You're not supposed to be good at the same subjects that I am, so you should pick a school that suits your abilities." But Uhi was determined to go to the same school as him. Sitso's hunch was right. After Uhi enrolled, she got very bad grades.
Are you dumb?
I think she's dumb.
I think she's dumb. Are you?
One day, as she was walking along, saddened by her marks, she was stopped by some young perverts. They kept telling her, "Forget about school and come hang out with us." Sitso suddenly appeared and spoke to these guys saying, "We're interested in studying, we don't have time to hang out." Even though there were a lot of them, they didn't feel like fighting Sitso, so they preferred to leave quietly.
Know your place, trash.
Sitso then noticed that Uhi was crying over her bad grades, so he spoke to her and said, "Take it easy, I promise to work on your grades and you'll get better with time." Uhi was overjoyed. After Sitso coached Uhi, she improved in all her theoretical subjects as well as in practical subjects, especially archery. Even after Sitso moved to another world, Uhi missed him all the time. In order to maintain her level, she talked to Ilka and asked her to supervise her training so that her level does not decline. Ilka started training her and kept telling her about Sitso and how he was a brave man who took it upon himself to bring peace between the kingdoms. It was then that Ilka noticed how Uhi missed him so much and wanted to be with him everywhere he went. Sensing Uhi's sincerity, Ilka supervised her training. Uhi has already shown remarkable improvement in a short time, and when she felt that, she told Ilka, "I feel like I've gotten pretty good, and that I can now move to the world that Sitso moved to so that I can be with him and help him." But Ilka spoke to her and said, "You have to realize that it's not that easy, and you have one final stage of training to be allowed to move to that world and help Sitso." And then Uhi was like, "Okay, I'm ready to go through all the training." Ilka took her to a secret basement and said, "You should know that this basement contains a number of unbeatable monsters." It was only a matter of moments before a huge ferocious crocodile emerged from the water in the basement and immediately began to attack Uhi, who was terrified at the sight of it and spoke to Ilka for help. But Ilka said, "You have to test your strength without my help." Uhi summoned her courage and started using her magical power and attacked the crocodile and even managed to injure it. The crocodile, despite the severity of his injury, remained steadfast and started attacking her again and managed to injure her. Uthi also managed to hit it, and then she had a chance to finish off the crocodile and kill it, but she didn't. And then Ilka spoke to her and said, "This is what you're missing. If you want to help Sitso and go to another world for that, you have to learn that there is a moment when you have to kill and spill blood." Ilka then finished off the crocodile instead of Uhi and left. Uhi felt very sad that she couldn't pass the final exam. After the situation was over, Tia went to console Uhi and also to work on her wounds from her battle with the crocodile. "It's okay, Ilka is treating you so hard because she sees you as a real fighter," she said. "We also saw the leader of the school's fighters talking to Uhi and encouraging her to be stronger so that she can help Sitso and help our kingdom." Uhi is very encouraged and begins to intensify her training. She was practicing very seriously. Within a few days, her level had risen significantly for everyone and became proficient in using her magical ability. And so she herself spoke to Ilka and said, "I'd like to retake this test that I failed a few days ago." Ilka said, "Don't do it unless you're ready." Uti immediately replied, "I've never felt more ready than I do right now," and she agreed. After I took her to the same place, the crocodile reappeared and began to attack Uti, but with one blow, she managed to finish him off. She was overjoyed, but Ui said, "I deliberately didn't kill it, I only immobilized him, and I vowed not to kill, but to protect everyone without bloodshed." Ilka marveled, that was Sitso's answer when he was in your position. The king then ordered a group of fighters from the school to be selected to protect the kingdom, and a group of them would be selected to move to another world. When Uhi learned that she had been selected, she was overjoyed. We returned to Sitso, who, accompanied by Lafaya, was on their way to the savage continent to continue their journey and eliminate any potential danger. While on the way, Sitso sensed that Lafaya had lost her passion and was getting bored. So he started talking to her, saying, "You were just telling me that you're very excited. Your enthusiasm is quickly fading, and I feel that if we are attacked by anyone right now, we will be defeated immediately." Lafaya joked to him, "You should be grateful that the Queen of the Seas herself is with you. That's no small thing, and you shouldn't be greedy." Suddenly, the carriage stopped, and Sitso drew his sword sword, sensing danger, but he was soon surprised by a young girl whom Lafaya discovered that he knew before, and we learned that this girl was named Elitzi. As soon as she saw Sitso, Elitzi cried out, "Master, take me and my sister on your way, and I promise you that I am no longer the crying and complaining girl that I used to be." On the way, they all chatted with each other. Elitzi talked about the time Sitso taught her the basics of fighting. Then Emil told Sitso that she was Elitzi's sister. Sitso was very surprised by this information because he knew very well that Elitzi did not have a brother. When he asked Elitzi to clarify the matter, Elitzi said, "Before I tell you this, you don't know how much I'd missed you. Since I disappeared about 5 years ago, I've been doing my best international work and practicing all the activities you taught me for the defense of good." One day, while helping the people of a neighboring village get rid of an evil dragon that was attacking them, I felt very hungry. I walked into the first house I saw, and there I met Emil, who told me that she was very sad and lonely all the time, especially after her brother left home and left her alone. From that moment on, we vowed to be sisters. Although this story was very interesting, we noticed that Sitso didn't notice anything in Elitzi's story other than the dragon attacking the villagers, so we asked her for more details. Elitzi goes on to say that the strangest thing is the way the dragon is attacking. It doesn't seem as random as most dragons. It's like it's on a mission. Some of the villagers disappear, and then the dragon disappears. After a while it comes back, as if to kidnap another group, and so on. Then she said, "Even though I chased it one day and even struck a blow to its body, it eventually managed to escape me." Strangely enough, when I returned to the village, I found that a very large number of villagers had disappeared, as if the village had been photographed abandoned. And then she went on to say, "After all this happened, I was just on my way to the city to ask for help, and I had the good fortune to meet you. Can you help me?" Even though the village wasn't Sitso and Lafaya's destination, they decided to help Elitzi in the end. As soon as Elitzi found out, she was overjoyed and kept thanking Sitso and telling him that he was always there for her. Sitso then began to analyze all the information that Elitzi had told him. When he asked Lafaya what she thought of it, Lafaya told him some strange hypotheses, such as that the dragon is a zombie dragon and that it turns the villagers into air zombies, meaning that their souls remain in the village but are invisible, which explains their disappearance. But Sitso didn't like this explanation, so Lafaya came up with an even weirder one. She suggested that the dragon has a connection to the sea world, and that's why he's kidnapping villagers to introduce them to the sea creatures. But Sitso spoke to them all and said, "We have to think logically, and I think the most appropriate type of magic that could be used to hide so many villagers is the magic of transportation. Although this magic usually takes a long time to activate, however, if the dragon has a supernatural, magical ability, it is possible that during his repeated attacks, he will be able to apply transportation magic to the villagers." What caught his attention was that Emil was deliberately withholding any important information about what happened, and so his suspicions began to grow. When he asked her what happened in the village and her version differed from Elitzi's, he felt something strange about it. As soon as he started asking her questions about what happened in the village, something unexpected happened. Emil suddenly transformed into the dragon Elitzi was talking about. Sitso and Lafaya realized that it's more complicated than they thought. Sitso began to gather his strength, and so did Lafaya. Elitzi tried her best to shake off her surprise, remembering all the instructions Sitso had taught her when she was his student. Then they all summoned their strength to fight fiercely against the fearsome dragon and try to understand what happened to the villagers. We then moved on to a village in the Savage Continent and saw how the villagers loved each other. We also learned that they have great respect for a girl named Shiranako who lives in their village, and we learned that their respect for her stems from their appreciation for the role she plays in the defense of their village and the entire Savage Continent. So after she returned from one of her regular battles and managed to win, many of the villagers talked to her. They kept insisting that she take some of their food, and even though she complimented them and took a lot of food, the rest of the villagers were saddened that she didn't take it from them. Shiranako gently apologized and said, "Believe me, I can't carry any more." We also noticed how the children of the village loved her very much. They always talked to her and asked her to teach them martial arts so they could become like her. But Shiranako always said, "Enjoy your childhood, but fighting is my duty." After Shiranako finished her conversation with the villagers, she went to her home, where we learned she lives with her sister Minako. Although Shiranako loved her sister very much, but as soon as she saw her, she began to feel distressed because Minako had an incurable disease. One of the symptoms of the disease was that she had frequent coughing fits. The biggest problem is that this cough is only relieved by a rare medicine. Although Minako took large doses of the drug, her improvement was very slow. But Shiranako was determined to get her sister more medicine. She always talked to her and reassured her that recovery was imminent. All she had to do was to take the medicine regularly and keep all the negative thoughts out of her head. She then went to a girl named Koroino, who we learned was also working to provide medicine for Minako. Shiranako kept thanking her, but Koroino said, "Don't thank me for anything, I'm just doing my job. It's great to provide medicine for a loyal girl like you who's trying to save her sister from her illness." Koroino then showed Shiranako a picture and informed her that this was the the new mission. The mission was to assassinate the owner of the photo, who we were surprised to find was Sitso. As for Sitso and Lefaya's journey, they finally reached the savage continent. After failing to find a boat, they entered the same place where Shironiko was talking to Kuroino. As soon as Shironiko saw them, she quickly left the place. Kuroino then started talking to Sitso and Lefaya, asking them if they were looking for a place to stay. Shironiko is determined to obey Kuroino's orders, so she resolved to kill Sitso at any cost. When darkness fell, Shironiko met Kuroino. I really consider you a sister, and you are a great favor to me and Minako. If it weren't for you and the medicine you prepare, my sister would have died a long time ago. Kuroino took advantage of these words and spoke to her, saying, "Then you must accomplish the tasks I have assigned to you, quickly and efficiently." Shironiko said, "Don't worry, I've managed to locate where Sitso is staying with Lefaya, and I'm going to carry out the mission now." As soon as Shironiko arrived at the place, she broke in and was about to kill Sitso, who wasn't even asleep, so he quickly gets up and starts attacking Shironiko. He soon realized that she was much weaker than she looked, so he easily defeated her. He then accompanied her to the house where she lives with her sister Minako there. Sitso revealed to them that Minako's disease was not a disease at all, but a curse in the necklace that Shironiko wears. As soon as Shironiko realized this, she begged him to try to eradicate this disease from her body, and Sitso told her that it would be difficult, but it was possible. He soon began to cast one of his most powerful spells, summoning a strangely shaped sword that looked like the jaw of a predator. This sword soon began to destroy the spell on Shironiko's necklace. Before Sitso could finish the procedure, Kuroino arrived on the scene and shouted, "Do you think you're going to destroy our plan so easily?" Then she delivered a fatal blow to Shironiko. Although the blow hit her, Lefaya intervened just in time to protect her. The battle changed sides, and instead of being between Sitso and Shironiko, it was between Lefaya and Kuroino. Even though Lefaya was outmatched, she decided to get as much information from her as she could, so she asked her directly, "What does Tuma want?" Kuroino said, "He wants to take his right and become the king of all the continents, and he deserves it. We are his followers, and we have pledged to help him reach his goal." Before Lefaya could learn more, Kuroino cast one of her spells and escaped. Although this was not a good thing, Lefaya and Sitso felt great after seeing Shironiko hugging her sister after the disease had passed. To Sitso's surprise, the pendant with the curse was the same as the one around Disastal's neck, so he said, "What a fool you are, Tuma. I promise I will reach you soon and destroy this evil that you want to destroy the world with." He then left with Lefaya to try to form an alliance with the leader of the savages. Shironiko and Minako spoke to him and told him that they wanted to go with him and Lefaya. Sitso told them that the road would be very difficult and is sure to be filled with dangerous battles. However, Shironiko and Minako assure him that they are eager to enter these battles and even more eager to finally eliminate Kuroino. We then saw a girl named Rua and learned that she is the daughter of the ruler of the savages named Regulus. Despite her young age, she was extremely brave, so she showed real prowess in her sword fight against her teacher. After the training session was over, we noticed how proud the teacher was of her. Meanwhile, the savage armies meetings were held to urge swift revenge on the humans and all those who aided them. Sitso finally arrived at the headquarters of the savage tribe's ruler. When the guards stopped him, he spoke confidently, telling them he was a follower of Regulus. But the guards mocked him, saying, "How can we trust a human like you, you fool?" Suddenly, Shironiko and her sister appeared and started talking to the guards, telling them to trust him. "He's our teacher and we guarantee he won't make any trouble." The guards remained adamant and asked Sitso to leave quickly before he got himself hurt. But Sitso was adamant and didn't move an inch. Suddenly, Ruwa, who we find out was Sitso's student the first time he went to this world 5 years ago, appears. So as soon as she saw him, she rushed over and hugged him and then tried to apply a fighting move he had taught her. But Sitso recognized the attempt and spoke to her. "It's hard for a student to outsmart a master, you idiot." Accompanied by Shironiko, her sister, and Ruwa, Sitso then set off to meet Regulus. As soon as Regulus saw him, he was overjoyed and they reminisced about their memories of each other. Regulus then decides to throw a huge feast to celebrate Sitso's return, but Sitso spoke to him and said, "I have something much more important than the feast that I want to talk to you about." Regulus looked at him intently and said, "Bring it on, I'm all ears." Then Sitso started talking to him, saying that Tuma is still alive. He is the cause of all the conflicts and disputes between the different kingdoms, and I am here to ensure the union between humans and savages. Although Regulus was about to agree, the leader of the savage army, Ruga, quickly stormed in. We learn that he and Sitso have not gotten along well since Sitso came to this world 5 years ago. So Ruga spoke up and told Regulus that humans and ferals have always been enemies. We can't change that now or we'll lose our credibility in front of everyone. Although Regulus tried to talk Ruga out of it, but Ruga remained adamant, so Regulus was forced to accept his opinion. Ruga then spoke to Sitso, telling him to stay away from Rua. She is my fiancé and soon to be my wife. Regulus took advantage of this and told Sitso and Ruga that he would hold a formal fight between them, with the winner being his future son-in-law. Naturally, Sitso welcomed it with open arms, as did Ruga. After the situation was over, Ruwa went to talk to Ruga and said, "I'm not saying this to upset you or discourage you, but Sitso is much stronger than you, and I suggest you drop out of the fight." Naturally, these words did not sit well with Ruga, who told her, "I will do everything in my power to defeat him, even if I have to use my magical ability that no one knows about." On the day of the fight, we saw Sitso standing in front of Ruga in the ring. Soon Regulus gave the signal and the battle began, which was fierce from the very first moment, but the odds were overwhelmingly in Sitso's favor, and in a matter of minutes, he was able to beat Ruga badly. That's when Ruga decided to transform into his monstrous form, turning into a very large wolf, but Sitso quickly picked him up like a small child and defeated him as well. It was only then that Ruga decided to use his magical ability that no one knew about, and we learned that it was inspired by the same spell that Tuma uses. The resulting power was so powerful that it startled everyone present, but it wasn't enough to defeat Sitso, who quickly pounced on Ruga and managed to hit him with several powerful blows. Regulus Tat gave the signal to end the fight before anything untoward happened, but before the fight was over, something unexpected happened when Tuma himself emerged from the wolf's body. Then he addressed Sitso and said, "You're still playing the hero, but I promise you that I will be the victor in the end." After Tuma finished speaking, the wolf's body fell. Regulus then spoke to Sitso and said, "I apologize to you for accepting this challenge in the first place." But Sitso said, "Take it easy, it's not your fault. Now we have to organize our ranks in order to move forward in this battle. The first thing we have to do is unite to go to the demonic continent and find out what their intentions are." Naturally, most of the inhabitants of the savage continent saw what happened and realized that it was in their best interest to follow Sitso. So they welcomed Regulus's union with him and resolved to help him. After the battle was over, Sitso spoke to Rua to check on her. "We must put aside our feelings and unite to win this fateful battle," Rua told him. We traveled back 10 years to the past and saw Sitso after he was summoned to the other world for the first time with a friend, although he was very surprised after it happened. The king of Destinia spoke to him and said, "You must be the hero who came to us to save us from our suffering." Sitso tried to accept that everything had become real, so he started talking to his friend and said, "We have to unite to save these people." And in a big surprise, we realized that his friend was none other than Tuma, and we saw Sitso talking to him and saying, "From now on, consider me your brother, and I promise to protect you from all dangers." The two of them began to train with all their might to protect the Kingdom of Destiny. After a short time, Sitso became very popular among the officers and soldiers of the Destinian army and assumed an important commanding position. As for Tuma, he completed his training and made a promise to Sitso, "I will work hard to become as strong as you, and together we can protect this kingdom." It wasn't long before Tuma became one of the strongest knights in the kingdom and began to take part in the actual operations that the Knights of Destiny were conducting against the demon army. Tuma was soon recognized as one of the strongest and fiercest knights in the kingdom. One day, while on a mission with Sitso, like most missions they go on with their teammates, they were able to attack a fortified demon fortress. They also managed to defeat them, and all was well. After Tuma's teammates left, Tuma heard a voice that he didn't know where it was coming from at first, and this voice started calling him, "Come closer to me. I know your true intentions. I know all about your emotions, your envy, jealousy, and anger towards others, especially Sitso." Although Tuma tried to resist the voice, he eventually succumbed to it. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the sound was coming from the magical necklace worn by the statue in the demon castle. So Tuma grabbed the necklace, and from that moment on, everything changed. Because Tuma wanted to prove his right to be the strongest knight of the kingdom, but after he possessed the magical power of the pendant, he was surprised by one of the knights who spoke to him. "Sitso has managed to end the war, and now I'm telling you that I'm about to make a peace treaty with the demons." Naturally, this news came as a shock to Tuma, especially since he felt that all his efforts for the Kingdom of Destinia had been in vain, and Sitso had become the center of everyone's attention. So he tried his best to hide his true feelings. After returning to the castle, he learned that a ceremony would be held to honor the most courageous knights who had contributed the most to the peace between the kingdoms. He was furious when the statue was unveiled, and was surprised to find that Sitso was the subject of the ceremony, and he was not mentioned. So when he met Sitso, he tried to talk to him nicely and said, "You have become more important, and your role seems to be the most prominent in the kingdom. But don't forget my role. I've done everything I can to protect the kingdom." Sitso didn't pay much attention to his words and said, "I have to say goodbye to you now to go to the celebration." Before Sitso left, Tuma said, "Let's forget everything that happened here and go back to our homeworld. I'm afraid we'll lose our friendship." But Sitso says, "On the contrary, it's more fun here than in the real world." Suddenly, Tuma's curse began to change his appearance. Sitso realizes this and quickly warns him, "You need to come to your senses." Tuma has had enough and decides to attack Sitso. Although Tuma's curse gave him tremendous strength, Sitso was able to deal with the attack. After Tuma was defeated, he felt very despondent and exhausted, and also felt that he couldn't fulfill any of the dreams he had when he arrived in the kingdom of Destinia. He was so frustrated that everything he'd done for the kingdom wasn't enough to satisfy anyone, but he quickly calmed himself down and decided to take revenge on the world that had rejected him. As soon as he found out that there was a laboratory that performed illegal experiments on people, he went to the lab and freed everyone in the lab, and then he started talking to them saying that we are the same. We have rejected the world, so let's join together to destroy this world full of despair. We then saw a ship full of soldiers who were followers of the human army. They were cheering each other on, saying that we should hurry up and show the demon army the true power of humans. We also noticed that Uhi was with them. Although everything was fine, they were all worried that even if they told their king about Tuma's betrayal, he probably wouldn't believe them, because of Tuma's many sacrifices and because of what Tuma had done for the kingdom. But in the end, they decided to close that file and focus on defeating the demon army at all costs, even though Uhi was very excited to fight this battle. However, once the battle began, Uhi discovered that it was much more difficult than she had imagined. But the human army managed to eliminate a large number of the demon army. Despite the difficulty of the battle, Ilka and her companions showed rare valor, and soon Ilka herself began to eliminate a number of demon army fighters. After killing most of them, they felt that they had won. However, a large number of demon army fighters, even more fierce and larger than the first ones, arrived on the battlefield. Surprisingly, these fighters resembled the ones Sitso had encountered before. But of course, there was no time to remember. Ilka and her companions soon engaged them and managed to kill most of them. To their surprise, Tuma had turned the humans into fighters in the demon army. The proof of this was that after they had taken out a number of demon army fighters, they were surprised to find that a human was inside each of them. Shortly afterward, a female fighter with her face covered arrived on the battlefield, but Ilka felt that she had seen her before. Indeed, after revealing her face, we discovered that this fighter was none other than Elitzi, and naturally her joining the demon army was a big surprise. And so everyone felt frustrated because they felt that Tuma had taken control of everyone and that he could take anyone into his army. But Elitzi wasn't alone. She was accompanied by another girl, Milwar, who we learned was none other than Emil. The problem was that Milwar knew how to use monsters. So, she collected the blood of the demon army soldiers and created a huge monster to wipe out Ilka and her companions. And indeed, that blood soon gathered and formed a number of huge monsters that began to attack Ilka and her companions. However, they managed to control the situation and defeat the monsters. Although Ilka thought she had achieved victory, Milwar quickly gathered her strength, regrouped the monsters, and cast her most powerful spell ever. She then mounted the head of the fiercest of the monsters to lead the battle, remembering how much she owed Tuma. She was one of the girls who was kidnapped in that lab for experimentation. Because Tuma had saved her, she was determined to defeat Ilka and her companions at all costs. But Ilka manages to direct her companions properly, and soon they were able to defeat Milwar, and even eliminate her and the monsters that accompanied her. Although this moment was an emotional one for Elitzi, however, she quickly came to her senses after seeing what had happened and realizing that she was under the influence of Tuma's spells. After the battle was over, Ilka felt that everything had gone well and that the demon army had been defeated. However, a human from the demon army suddenly appeared out of the water. Ilka told them, "You have to retreat and I'll do the fighting." But Uhi summoned up her courage and said to everyone, "I'm going to fight this fight to defeat that arrogant asshole." Although her words were shocking to her comrades, they cheered her on, even though the human from the demon army was much stronger than her. So as soon as he saw her step forward to fight against him, he taunted her. "Is your army so weak that they would let a poor girl like you fight against me?" But Uhi didn't heed such words and bravely stepped forward. Before she could engage him, Sitso appeared at just the right moment as usual. "I know how brave you are, but I'm here to help you, and you should know that you're safe now." We then moved to the continent of the savages and saw its king talking to one of his aides and telling him to order the army to prepare to move in preparation for the upcoming battles. We saw how the king of the savages was counting on Sitso's arrival because he was sure that he would not win any battle without him. Sitso was right on time, and as soon as he arrived, the human-looking superhero began to challenge him. Sitso remembers him and says, "You seem to be the same person who was in Dizistal's house. We've met before." The superhero confirmed this information, and soon they began to fight each other violently. As for Shiranako and her sister Miniko, they had the opportunity they had been waiting for, as Kuroino appeared, and Shiranako and her sister prepared to take revenge on her. And indeed, the battle began, and the fight was very fierce. But we noticed how Kuroino underestimated Shiranako and her sister's ability to fight. "You're just two worthless vagabonds, and I'm going to crush you right now," she taunts them. Then she immediately started attacking them. Although her strength was clearly superior to that of Shiranako and Miniko, Shiranako and her sister decided to use their brains, as strength alone is often not enough. Shiranako and her sister managed to knock Kuroino into a deep hole. They thought thought the battle was over, but Kuroino taunted them again. "Stop joking around, you two idiots, this is just the beginning." Soon she was able to climb out of the hole and start fighting them again. When Kuroino realizes that Shironeko and her sister are only as strong as each other, she decides to grab Miniko, leaving Shironeko alone. Although Shironeko repeatedly tried to rescue her sister, she was unable to do so because Kuroino had an unbreakable grip on her. Shironeko had an idea that Kuroino never imagined she would have. She got very close to the arm that Kuroino was holding her sister with, and was able to dodge Kuroino and activate the union spell with her sister. Once this happened, Miniko was able to escape Kuroino's grip and began to unite with her sister in order to continue fighting together. After recognizing Kuroino's weaknesses, it wasn't long before they were able to finish off Kuroino and win the battle they had been waiting for. So after the victory, they felt relieved that they had taken revenge on the person who had caused them so much trouble. We then moved on to Rua, who was fighting a fierce battle against one of the fiercest fighters of the demon army, who we learned was named Firdos. Oddly enough, Firdos was far more powerful than Rua, especially since Tuma gave him the ability to change into any shape, form, or size at any time. And even though Rua was fully aware of this, she fought bravely and managed to injure Firdos, who began to taunt her that this was just the beginning. Soon he was able to turn his body into a bunch of steel balls. He then collected these balls and threw them at Rua, who was badly injured. Firdos thought that Rua had surrendered, but this was not the case. She gathered all her courage and rushed towards him, shouting, "I will do everything, even if my life is the price, to eliminate Tuma and his followers." As soon as she approached Ferdos's body, he transformed himself into a set of iron thorns that pierced Rua's body. But she wouldn't let go of him and continued to deliver powerful blows. Moments later, Rua was able to pierce Ferdos's body with a very powerful punch, but her body continued to bleed from the injury she had sustained. The strange thing is that Firdos, although he was sure of death, used his last spells to save Rua's life, who was very surprised by what happened and addressed him, saying, "How can someone like you help Tuma?" Firdos spoke to her as he breathed his last, saying, "No one ever cared about me, but a girl with your courage and pride deserves to live. You have to live and continue to fight for your cause," and then he died. As for Sitso, he was also in a very dangerous battle against this powerful superhero, and although the battle was evenly matched at times, in the end, Sitso was able to prevail over the superhero, who fought until the very last moments of the battle. Although Sitso did not like to kill most of the time, he was forced to do so in this battle, the loss of which would have meant the loss of his life. So, after setting a trap for his opponent, the superhero rushed into the trap and Sitso struck him with a blow that ended his life. Before he died, the superhero spoke in a low voice to Sitso, saying, "Thank you for being a noble knight until the end of the battle," and then he died. Sitso hurriedly arrived at Dizistal's palace, but it was the first time he arrived late. Once there, he discovered that Tuma had beaten him there and had also managed to capture Lifaya and Dizistal. As soon as Sitso got there, he immediately engaged in a fierce battle with Tuma. Of course, the battle was fateful, and the fate of all the kingdoms was at stake, so Sitso entered that fight with all his might and was determined not to lose no matter what. And so it was with Tuma, who started the battle with all his might, and utilized all of his powerful magic spells. After they exchanged blows, Sitso spoke sarcastically to affect Tuma's morale and said to him, "I think we just finished warming up, so let's fight like two strong men." Soon, the battle between them ignited, and we noticed that Tuma was deliberately using deadly spells to eliminate Sitso early and end this battle in his favor. Although Tuma managed to hit Sitso with a very powerful blow, Sitso executed a strategic retreat in order to catch his breath and regain his equilibrium, and also to make Tuma think it was easier than he imagined. But this trick didn't work on Tuma, who realized that Sitso was playing a trick on him, so he utilized his most powerful weapon, which was a very large pistol that shoots magic spells as far away as possible. He soon began to fire his spells toward Sitso's body, who also managed to activate his weapon, which was a flying sword that devoured all magical spells. As soon as the spells approached him, Sitso gave the command to his sword and it immediately devoured the spells. Naturally, Tuma felt a lot of frustration, but he quickly shook it off and started attacking Sitso again. Sitso was able to block his blows, and before he could strike him, he spoke to him, "Let's end this better. Tuma, you were once one of the bravest knights in the kingdom of Distania. Come to your senses and let go of everything that happened and I guarantee that we will be friends again." But Tuma scoffed and remained adamant. Sitso decided to strike back and fired several shots of his magical power at Tuma, who was able to activate his most powerful armor to block Sitso's shots. However, his armor, despite its strength, did not last long and soon shattered. Sitso was able to reach him and began to address him, saying, "Now it's all over. I gave you more than one chance, and you insisted on completing his evil plans." Then Sitso gave him a powerful blow that ended his life. Although everyone thought it was all over, Tuma was was able to use a magical power. That was so surprising to everyone that no one had ever seen such a magical power before this time, and we noticed how his power was so powerful that it disturbed Sitso himself. Soon, Tuma appeared standing next to a giant magic gun used to fire magic projectiles, not bullets. After firing the first projectile from his weapon, the projectile hit Sitso's body directly, and he fell from a very high height. Tuma was happy and felt that he had defeated Sitso. He kept talking to himself, saying, "I finally managed to defeat Sitso, who always felt unbeatable." But Sitso quickly gathered his strength, got up, and decided to punish Tuma for everything he had done. So he used a special space magic spell. Tuma was annoyed because he didn't expect Sitso to be so good at this kind of spell. Naturally, Tuma was horrified that the spell would transport him to a deep space where he would die alone. So he kept begging Sitso not to cast the spell, but Sitso did. As Tuma was waiting to die, he was surprised to find himself coming back to life. He found Sitso in front of him saying, "I never break my promises. I once promised to protect you, and here I am protecting you. I was just trying to bring you to your senses, and I never intended to kill you." Tuma was very touched. He was in tears and kept saying to Sitso, "I don't deserve this. I've done a lot of unforgivable things." And Sitso said, "You can atone for them in time." Then the savages decided to punish Tuma in prison for the trouble he caused them, but Sitso negotiated with them and came up with a less harsh punishment for Tuma. They decided to take away his magical powers and return him to the human world. When Tuma learned of this, he was overjoyed because he expected to spend the rest of his life in prison. As for Sitso, he decided to continue his journey between different worlds to always fight for good against evil. Naturally, his comrades in this world were very sad to see him go, but Uhi spoke to him and said, "I will accompany you wherever you go. I can't imagine my life without you."